So after my Over the Garden Wall video, as to not get creative burnout this month, I decided to do something a little different and something a little bit more relaxed on my end. If you follow me on Letterboxd, you probably have an idea of what that is, but then again, you can see the title and you're watching the video, so you probably already know. But anyway, with Pixar's latest movie, Soul, coming out soon, I thought it would be interesting to rank every feature-length Pixar movie that came before it. So in a course of 15 days, I think, I watched over 40 hours of Pixar movies so that I could rank them, since there were several that I had pretty much hadn't seen since they came out. So, with way too much of my life put into this, even though this was supposed to be more relaxed, now present In Greyway Films' least Christmassy December video, official, definitive, conclusive, ultimate, decisive, absolute, final Pixar ranking. That is, at least until Soul comes out. Also, stay tuned for a bonus ranking of every John Ratzenberger character. So the way I'm going to break this down and kind of format it is I'm going to put it in an order from bottom up, ranking and telling you why I put them where I did, and I'm going to have some small tierage going on. We're going to have 4 tiers. We're going to have the low tier, the low mid tier, the top mid tier, and the top tier. Kind of confusing, but that's how they broke down, because there's 23 movies, and yeah. And also spoilers for pretty much every Pixar movie besides Soul. Low tier. Starting at number 23. A 2011 animated movie. Cars 2.
Average intelligence.
No surprises, really. I have Cars 2 at the very bottom. This was actually kind of a surprise to me going in it, though. I watched Cars 2 in theaters, and when it came out, obviously. And I actually remember young me, liking it back then, but obviously not enough to watch it again for 9 years. So when I put it in and tried to stay optimistic, hoping I would be the guy to say that Cars 2 was actually extremely underrated, and maybe slot it at least into the low mid tier, I was pretty disappointed when I turned it on and found out why everyone said what they did about it. To preface this a little, I watched all of these movies in order, so I had just come off of Cars a couple movies ago, and I was thinking to myself, man, I just don't really like Mater that much anymore, which I know is kind of a controversial take, because everyone likes Mater, but he just kind of got on my nerves a lot in Cars, and then I turned on this. And not only does it have Mater as the lead, but it also has several major plot points around the reason I find him annoying, that he just doesn't understand things and nobody really takes the time to explain anything to him. They just expect him to know this stuff. So we're already grating on my nerves at the beginning of this movie, just all the way through. And not only that, but this movie has no idea what it wants to be. It's called Cars 2, setting it up to be a direct sequel of Cars, and I actually really like the Grand Prix idea, and even having a car like Francesco there, and even, dare I say, bringing Mater along could be fun to bring conflict to the story. But then we add in spy stuff, we dropped something that could be really cool, and that we spent, aside from the opener, most of the beginning of the movie setting up, and we do rip off James Bond. Now granted, I don't think that the James Bond stuff is an awful idea for a spin-off, but making it part of this sequel, and to essentially Lightning McQueen's story, and just kind of smushing them together, doesn't work at all, and hardly allows for Lightning McQueen's glory days to be shown. In Cars 3, he retires. In Cars 1, he gets started, and we skip over all of his what should be his best racing because spy stuff. Now there's a lot more in this movie of why it's not very good, from the pacing to the dialogue to just whatever happened in the writing room for structuring of this. But I think the main thing that bothers me is that it doesn't work, at all as a sequel to Cars. and it just kind of has to almost be forgotten for Cars 3 to happen. And yeah, I know they have like one line that references it, but like still, it kind of is just forgotten. But I think it actually like ruins the trilogy and ends up making like one of the most chaotic, badly written Pixar movies to ever come out. Number 22, the 2018 classic, Incredibles 2. This may come as a surprise to some people who are new to the channel, but any veteran of the channel will know that this is one of my least favorite animated movies to watch, period, and probably my least favorite animated sequel of all time. I will say that the animation is like top notch, and the lighting, gorgeous, the score, still amazing, if not better than the original, but that's about where the good things stop. Not only does this movie make the world that we had established as very grounded and real feeling in the first one crazy as heck, like I don't know what the heck is going on, how any of these other superheroes work in normal society. They use a super easy to predict villain whose motivations are shaky at best, but it also takes up our main characters, our family, who we spent a whole movie literally directly before this one, learning to grow as a family and to work better as a family and to fight and to survive as a family, and turn them into like flat, one-note characters that have the weirdest dialogue and the weirdest dynamics, and you really could only get these characters from the first movie if you either haven't watched it in like years and only have a vague memory of how the characters were, or if you've only watched like the first 5 minutes of it. I won't go too in-depth because I already wrote a 2-part video essay about it, but while on the surface, Incredibles 2 looks like it would be a fun sequel that moves the characters to the next step and is just really great, it ends up doing effectively nothing with the characters by the end except for putting them right back where they were in the first one. And I know superheroes get legalized in this one, but I don't really care about that because what I care about is this family, and they have like so little emotional connection to superheroes getting legalized in the first one that this just seems so disconnected, and it's the only thing that changes by the end of this. And it even makes like me a little upset because why would you make something legal just to make it more illegal? Like what kind of plan is that? It doesn't make sense. It destroys character, and it really does just the bare minimum to even be an Incredibles sequel. Number 21. The 2015 movie you know, you love, you probably only watched once because it isn't very good, The Good Dinosaur. Again, I've pulled out like 0 surprises for anyone who knows me or knows Pixar. But for those of you who don't know, this movie released right after the movie Inside Out. I'll talk more about it later, but Inside Out is one of the most emotionally heartfelt movies to come out of Pixar. So much personal and emotional investment went into it from its director and writer Pete Docter, and it definitely shows in the movie. And then the next thing to come up from the studio is this. Now, I'm not going to say that The Good Dinosaur is the worst Pixar movie like a lot of people would, but I think it's the most emotionally lacking Pixar movie to ever come out. Watching this and really paying attention to it, it seemed on the surface to be exactly like most Pixar movies in structure and idea, and even the animation looks amazing besides the whole environment looking like a million times more realistic than any of the dinosaurs. But yet everything about this movie falls flat. All the typical Pixar emotional beats came and completely missed. It ends up being one of the most boring and forgettable Pixar movies, almost completely because we don't care about these characters really at all. Even maybe the tiny, itty-bitty Arlo-sized emotional attachment you get to Arlo is kind of overshadowed by the fact that nobody cares about this random dog character that just so happens to look like a human. I honestly don't even really remember his name and don't really want to, but if they would have made him an actual dog, you know, just to lose the human reference, I think this movie would have been at least cuter to look at. But the main plot revolves around these two characters having emotional connection, culminating with a big rescue where Arlo's father had died. But we just don't care at all, or at least I didn't. Honestly, I was kind of rooting for the Storm Provides guys because at least they were fun. But the lack of emotion mixed with some of the most boring, slow-paced world building and some of whatever this is made this into one of the most forgettable Pixar movies ever made. Besides that. Everybody remembers that. Number 20. Are you a bug in 1998? Well, then I have a movie for you. Coming to theaters semi-near you is A Bug's Life. This may come as a shock for a lot of people because I know several people who really like A Bug's Life, and it's like a classic for them or whatever, but I really remember not liking this as a kid, and I still don't really like it now. One of my least favorite things in story writing are plot points that revolve around simple misunderstandings or simple mistakes done by somebody who was legitimately trying to help. And this movie has both. The plot of this movie is so contrived, and the characters are just not interesting in the slightest. The emotion isn't there for me, the interest isn't there for me, and really the only thing I do like about this movie is the bad guy. I don't have too much to add with this one like the others so far. I just personally don't like this movie. It isn't like the worst of the worst overall, but it's just not for me. Number 19, I was gonna do a funny joke with an accent, but I'm way too bad at accents to do it, so it's Brave, which came out in 2012 since I've been saying the date. Ah, Brave, how I loved you growing up, how I loved your music and your red-haired main character and your beautiful accents, how I loved your Scottish culture and the unique style for Pixar. Those were the good old days. Now, to be fair, I still love all that stuff about it, but the movie itself just isn't the greatest. It was Pixar's first and so far only Disney princess movie, but honestly, it's probably my favorite Disney princess. But the story side of things just don't really come through. The pacing and the writing leave a lot of the core of the movie, which I actually really like, to the side, and it feels like we're doing almost nothing for most of the movie besides like political and bear-related shenanigans. And it feels like we leave this very emotional, very, in my opinion, beautiful story about a mother and daughter understanding each other in the dust. Even the resolution of the film feels not really earned to me because they didn't do that much with the mother and daughter except for like stuff on the surface. So now we have non-Bear Queen riding into the sunset on horseback, and it just feels not right, especially for that character. I don't know, it's not entirely awful, but it just feels like a big missed opportunity to do something new and creative with a Disney princess because, you know, it's Pixar. Also, this is like the only Pixar movie with consistent nudity. And I don't really know how I feel about that. Too many Illumination vibes. Bleep bleep, bleep bleep, bleep bleep, bleep bleep. We're picking up number 18 on the radar, sir. It's the 2016 movie Finding Dory. Finding Dory is fine. I don't know. I don't really like the way they treat Dory in a lot of this movie, but it's kind of the point, but still, I don't know. I don't really like all that. I guess the main reason this one is so low is I find the story pretty boring. The story consists mostly of Dory looking for her parents, which she finally remembered, and Marlin and Nemo looking for Dory. And they end up going around in circles until they just straight up find out that Dory's parents weren't even where they were looking the whole movie. And it's not the worst thing in the world, it just makes a lot of the movie really boring for me. I especially don't like what they do with Marlin in this one. The new characters are fine, and the expansion of the universe is good, but overall I just feel like this movie is doing the least with everything it has. And it's just meh. Here comes number 17! Number 17! Andy's coming! Oh wait. No, he's not. because this is Toy Story 4, the 2019 animated movie. Toy Story 4 is interesting for me because it's another one that I got to see in theaters, but I actually really didn't like it at the time. I thought it was a really weird continuation for what I thought was the perfect ending of the story, and I felt like it really sidetracked some of the characters and made Buzz especially feel like an idiot sandwich just so he had something to do to progress the plot. Now, after a year of sitting on it and watching all the previous Toy Story movies coming up to it, I would say it's still my least favorite of them, but I don't dislike it as much as I did. I think mainly I'm a little more on board with the ending for Woody because the first time I watched it, and still a little bit on this one, I could kind of care less about Bo Peep, and it just felt kind of weird, and still kind of does, coming off after the entire movie about sticking together no matter what, that Woody's just like, okay, goodbye. But it's still a decent ending for, like, solely Woody and Bo, like no one else. The other characters, especially like my favorite character of the whole series, Buzz, just get to do nothing for the whole movie, and it just feels so wrong for the series. Overall, it's still okay, but I'll never get over what they did to Buzz, and Toy Story 3 will always be the ending to the series for me. Look, number 16 is rounding the corner, and look, it's the 2006 movie Cars! Now, I think this is probably a bit of a hot take to have this all the way back here in 16th, but I'll stand by this choice. Obviously, at this point, these aren't like the worst of the worst or anything. I really don't think there are that many awful Pixar movies, but I think Cars is just one of the shakiest of the Pixar movies, especially one that's not a sequel around the time that it came out. I'm just not really a fan of the story or the way they tell it. It feels like the first Pixar movie to really have no reason to be its own universe. Like, the movie wouldn't really have to change hardly at all if you made it humans and not cars. This movie throughout just feels like such a wild card, but not like in a great way. And it just feels like anything can and will happen, but for the weirdest reasons. And I know I said it earlier, but I'll say it again, I just really don't like Mater that much in this one. And the only car I really do like is Lightning, and, you know, he's kind of a jerk in this one. I don't know, it's not that bad, it's just not up there for Pixar movies for me, both in writing and in concept. Though Owen Wilson is the biggest win of anything that came out of this.
Wow! Good job! Wow. 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 Chow. Wow. Good job!
Mid-low tier. I really am kind of making these movie intros up as I go along, and I don't really have one for this, so number 15, the first of our mid-low tier category, is Monsters University, that 2013 classic. So to kick off this tier, we have an extremely mediocre movie that brings interesting depth as a prequel. But you know, at least it's the only Pixar prequel, that's pretty cool. I think the majority of this movie is just okay. It's got the whole typical two characters that don't like each other are forced to work together stuff, mixed in with a lot of monster jokes and stuff that really makes me question how this universe works. But the reason this is up as high as it is for me is the ending. This is going to sound a bit crazy, but I think this movie has one of the best Pixar movie endings of like just any Pixar movie. It doesn't save the movie entirely, honestly, but the stuff when they get into the human world with Mike is honestly, to me, amazing and kind of beautiful, if that makes sense. I've gotten chills pretty much like every time they've pulled off that ending the way they did, and the little montage afterwards about how they got into Monsters, Inc. is really cool and really sweet, and it just makes me love these characters even more than I did from Monsters, Inc., but overall this movie is still pretty meh, but I think that ending is just absolutely perfect. In number 14, we have that 2017 movie you all know and love, Cars 3. This was another movie that I didn't really like when I watched it in theaters. I just didn't like the new characters and the fact that there are just faster cars now. Even though, like, Lightning can still race well, he just can't win because newer, faster cars are born, made, manufactured. I don't know. And to a certain extent, I still don't like that very much, but I like the new characters this time around. And as much as I still don't like the fact that Lightning can't keep up just because, I think it's actually a really sweet ending for him as a character and kind of transitions into the quote-unquote next generation of the Cars universe. Though I'm not saying we should get more Cars movies. Please don't do that. Like, Planes was bad enough. Magic Spelliar, or as, we like to say, number 13, that 2020 Pixar movie, Onward. I feel like this has happened with a lot of these movies so far, but I actually, get this, didn't really like this on my first watch. I don't know, it felt very cheesy and not that well thought out to me. And as much as I like Chris Pratt, his character and like the voice acting performance he gave kind of annoyed me. Even then, I didn't think it was like awful or anything, it just really wasn't for me. But on this viewing, actually, I liked it quite a bit more. It's got a very cute story with a lot of emotion behind it, and while the world building is still meh to me, I like Chris Pratt's character more, and it just worked on a whole a lot more on this watch. Overall, still far from perfect structurally and writing-wise, but the heart of the story really comes through, and it takes it a step above the ones that have come before it. At number 12, we have Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, The Adventure Begins, that 2000 movie. Yes, this is actually a Pixar movie, and yes, it's their only 2D movie, and yes, it is an official thing in the Toy Story universe. I grew up on this movie, I loved this movie, I wanted to be in this movie, and now taking a step back because I hadn't seen this movie in 8 years, it actually held up surprisingly well, and it actually goes pretty hard. The story is very basic, and the animation is budget was extremely low, but the characters are great. The LGM stuff with the Unimine and stuff, it's all good. All the Zurg stuff is really funny, which I didn't remember at all, but it was great. Overall, it may be the nostalgia, but I really enjoy this one still. Number 11, we have Inside Out, a 2015 movie. This movie was actually one of the hardest for me to rank. I don't like Inside Out. I just don't enjoy watching it. Most of the characters annoy me. Most of the comedy I don't find that funny. But I'm also aware that this is a super well-written movie, probably one of the best screenplays of a Pixar movie, especially to this point. And the amount of emotion Pete Docter brought into this was insane. I've watched some of the behind-the-scenes about it, and the unconventional way he went about writing it, and how he came up with the idea and everything. And it's a really cool story. This movie meant a lot to him, and you can feel that. It's one of the most emotionally real movies in all of Pixar, which, isn't that surprising, being that it's a movie about emotions, but still. I don't enjoy it much. It's just hard for me to rank it, but I'm kind of happy where it is right now. And all I can say is if this is one of your favorite Pixar movies, that's, perfectly valid. It's just not for me. Top mid-tier. This is where things get real dicey. Number 10, Finding Nemo of 2003. This was another one that I didn't like growing up that much, and I think it was mainly because I watched it so much that I got extremely tired of it, but it caught me way off guard this time when I thought it was actually pretty good. It's no top-tier movie or anything, but it has a really well-structured story, and one of my favorite Pixar environments that they've ever designed, especially on a sound design level. Amazing. It's just a really sweet story, and they do a great job with all the character arcs, and I have a lot of fun. It's insanely better than the sequel. Number 9, Up of 2009. Pretty much everyone knows Up. Everyone knows it mainly for its opening. It has a strikingly emotional and sad opening that got pretty much anyone over 25 crying, and that really stuck out in everybody's mind. This movie has kind of held a special place in a lot of people's minds, and that's perfectly fine on a whole, but I think it's just, like, fine. Like a good fine, but still not like an extra special fine. The story itself is really well structured, and the emotional investment you have in these characters is insane, as shown from the opening. But I actually find the end of the second act and even the third act a little boring. I think a lot of it can be contributed to the fact that the tension doesn't really work for me, because I see, like, absolutely no way an old man, a young boy, one not very threatening dog, and a big bird could fight against an, albeit old man, but with weapons and an actual army of vicious dogs. In the movie, they do, like, a decent job with it, I guess, but it always feels so disingenuous to me, and it makes me kind of tune out as this guy and 100 dogs are struggling to catch one man in his floating house through South America. Overall, it doesn't take away from the movie too much, and I still think it's really great, but it's just not up there for me. Number 8. Monsters, Inc. 2001. Another one of my hot takes, maybe? I don't know how much people like this movie. It's very good still. I think we've gotten to the point where all of these movies are really well done, but I'm just not the biggest fan of this one. Again, a little bit from watching it so much as a child, but also I still just don't really like the environment of Monsters, Inc. It makes it feel so tight and almost claustrophobic, but, like, not in a good way. I feel like the space is just drawing energy away from the movie, even though that doesn't make a lot of sense. Still, this movie has some of the most likable characters and insane castings that work just so well. And the story they tell is really cool, though the thing that's interesting to me with watching this and Monsters University so close to each other is, doesn't all the stuff that they do at the end of the movie, like the record-breaking, adult-scaring scream energy thing that they got, mean anything? Like, I get it was made afterwards, so it's not the fault of this movie, but of MU, but, like, the laughter is powerful, but is it as powerful as the adult screams? Like, what does that mean for the universe? Number 7. Toy Story 3, 2010. Now we're getting into, like, the really, really good stuff. This was, like, such a beautiful ending to the trilogy. Like, this is so good on so many levels. I'll say that the pacing and structure around the third act do get a little dicey, and the way they actually get saved in the end is a little meh to me. Also, why can't they just let Buzz be Buzz? Why, in the latter half of this franchise, and even some extent to the first half, can't they just have Buzz be a good character and a good buddy to Woody, huh? I love Buzz. Why can't that happen? But anyway, this explores some really cool stuff in the universe, and it just goes to show you that Toy Story is, like, by far the best and most well thought out and explored universe of any Pixar, like, universe made. Lotso is a great bad guy and one of my favorite villains from Toy Story and just from Pixar in general. The Sunnyside stuff is so good, like, everything there is good. Such an amazing send-off to the characters when they get a new owner, and I'm just glad they never made a sequel. Number 6. Toy Story 1995. I know, how is this not at the top of my list, but it's just not the greatest to me. It does so much good and sets up one of the greatest animated trilogies ever made, while being the first feature-length 3D animated movie. It's absolutely insane on so many levels, and it's so good, but I just don't think the stories and the characters are quite there for me, even though this movie is just so darn close to perfect. I love all of these movies. Take this with a grain of salt as a ranking, because, like, Toy Story is so good, and I'm not saying that it's not. Top tier! In our number 5 slot, we have the 2017 movie, Coco. I think really what the top 5 is just the top 5 animated movies I quote the most, and this definitely deserves one of those spots. This movie is a little untraditional for Pixar, even though it's not a musical. It is a movie that revolves around musicians and has a lot of characters singing songs, which has never really happened before in a Pixar movie. But man, I'm so glad it did. These songs are absolutely beautiful. The voice actors they got to sing and play the characters do like 210%. The story is super sweet and like more dramatic than I thought it would be going into it, with like some really clever humor and some of the most gorgeous animation I've ever seen. Like, no joke, this animation is so amazing with the details of the Land of the Dead and the beautiful vibrant colors and the fingers actually playing the guitar. It's amazing. And like, this movie is just one of my favorite Pixar movies ever. And yes, I sing Remember Me exclusively like Ernesto de la Cruz. Coming in at number 4, Toy Story 2, 1999. This might actually be like the hottest take on the video for this being so high, but I just think this is one of the best sequels ever made in general, not even in Pixar or just in animation, just one of the best sequels ever made. I do honestly think it's better than the first one, and it just does so much for the universe, expanding it perfectly with the characters, themes, and plots. I think the only thing that's slightly underwhelming about this is the bad guy, but like only slightly. The motivations and the stuff all makes sense. I just think the twist is a little lacking, but this movie is so close to perfect that I have to nitpick something like that to say something is wrong with it. Coming in at number 3, WALL-E, 2008. Whew, WALL-E. We're getting into like some insane stuff in the top 3. This is one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. It takes itself slow and seriously, working in the comedy naturally into the environment that is super foreign but also super familiar. I don't want to like deep dive into this. It's a masterpiece, and there's so much there to unpack. But from the lack of dialogue to the beautiful environments, yes, even the trashy earth is beautiful, and the amazing score, and one of the coolest villains in Pixar, it just makes a one-of-a-kind experience that is way more emotional than a couple of robots holding hands while watching Hello Dolly should be. Coming in at number 2, The Incredibles, 2004. The Incredibles made it evenly on both ends of my ranking, which is kind of funny. I've done a video on my channel already talking about why this movie, briefly anyway, is so good. But honestly, this is one of the most rewatchable, quotable movies I've ever seen, all while having a beautiful environment and a powerful score, and doing superheroes better than Marvel and DC have been doing for years. This movie's heart is family, and the family works so well in this. Every dynamic is believable, and it brings real conflict, from a kid who's too young to really get what's going on, to a wife who thinks her husband might be cheating on her, to a guy who needed so much to be special, to be incredible, that he left and put in danger the most incredible thing in his life. Everything in this movie just comes together so perfectly, and it works so well, all while having, I'll say it, the best Pixar villain. And now, with no surprises in the number 1 slot, Ratatouille, 2007. This is my favorite movie of all time, which I'm sure if you watch this channel you know, because the video that's actually most popular on my channel is my video about Ratatouille, despite me being really bad at the whole video essay thing by then. But this movie means so much to me. The characters, the environments, and the story are beautiful. The message this movie brings about criticism and art and even family is beautiful, and has honestly majorly affected how I watch movies, or how I really look at any art, and how I make this channel even. It's hard for me to sum up this movie in words because of how much it means to me, but it's out of this world with its story and writing and structure and animation, and the amount of layers that went into everything in this. It's just insane. How a movie about a rat cooking in a big restaurant in Paris became my favorite movie, I'll never know, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And with that, I've ranked Pixar. Although not all of their movies are perfect by far, you can see why this studio has such an amazing reputation. And it's put out what I think are the two best animated movies of all time, and just so many impactful, heartfelt movies. I'm super excited to see how Soul is, and I think you can now officially pin Pixar as a part of my brand since I've made like 4 videos about Pixar stuff now. Anyway, I hope this video was fun because that was the main goal of this one, something a little less serious and a little bit more fun to make and watch. I would love to see your rankings of them in the comments, and I hope you have a great Christmas, or had a great Christmas depending on when this video actually releases. Now, for the ranking of the Ratzenberger. So if you don't know, John Ratzenberger is in every single Pixar movie that has come out. I think the way it started out was from some joke about him being their good luck charm after Toy Story did so well, and so they just started giving him a small role in every movie, and I'm here to rank them, so you don't have to. Overall, he only has 15 individual characters out of the 23 movies because of repeating characters, and I'm only going to rank the characters themselves, not their specific movie, so just keep that in mind. At number 15, I have the Underminer, appearing in Incredibles 1 and 2. He's fine in the first Incredibles movie, but I absolutely hate the way they did him in Incredibles 2 for several reasons, so he makes the bottom. Number 14, Earl the Dinosaur from The Good Dinosaur. I didn't like this movie, it had a lot of not memorable characters, including this one. Number 13, Construction Worker Fenwick from Onward. Another one where he isn't awful, just not that memorable. I'm not even sure he has more than 2 lines here. Number 12, Bill from Finding Dory. Bill the Crab is definitely cute, but he doesn't really do much, though we're starting to get to the ones that I actually like. Number 11, Fritz from Inside Out. We're still in the short one-line type cameos, but this one isn't awful, it's just short and not especially sweet. Number 10, Gordon from Brave. R.I.P. his mustache, that's all I have to say. Number 9, Mac, appearing in Cars 1 through 3. This is actually a big role, and it's featured in multiple movies, but I've never really liked Mac that much, and I thought he should have stood up more to Lightning in the first one. Number 8, Fish School, appearing in Finding Nemo. The only reason this is as high as it is because if you go on the Disney Dream cruise ship, they have an animator's palette, or at least they used to, I don't know if they still do, a Crush Turtle Talk thing, and while you're waiting for Crush to get to your table, the school of fish would come and try to get you to guess things that they would make, so I have very pleasant memories of them. Number 7, Construction Worker from Up. Here's a fun, short cameo with a funny line and, a very nice fellow. Number 6, P.T. Flea from A Bug's Life. I don't like this movie very much, but the line deliveries he gives are amazing. Number 5, Yeti from Monsters, Inc. and Monsters University. A lot of fun in both movies, even though he's just a tiny cameo in Monsters U, but he's honestly one of my favorite parts of the third act of Monsters, Inc. Number 4, Juan... I don't even want to try his last name, but the braces guy from Coco. But I mean, look at those braces, man. They're so good, and he got put up there by his dentist. Come on, that's epic. Everybody needs that. Number 3, Ham from Toy Story 1 through 4. Love Ham in pretty much every movie. He has some amazing lines, and I love him in 3's opening so much, but, he's not top material for me. Number 2, John from WALL-E. He's great, the love story is one we all need, and I mean, they save the children in the end, so, come on. And in that sweet, sweet number 1 spot, Mustafa from Ratatouille. I know, Ratatouille, but, yeah. Literally, he's one of the most quotable characters in all of Pixar. His lines are iconic, and I think we all need to take some time to appreciate them. Thanks for watching this far if you did. I know this video is a little longer. I hope you had fun. Check out my Twitch and my Twitter if you want. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Hopefully 2021 will be good.
Who cooks the ratatouille? I demand to know! La, la, la.